In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to my self-care friends and family. Welcome back to another Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you made space to be here today. Now, before we jump into today's episode, please do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibes, go ahead and show us some love. You can do so by tapping the screen, liking, commenting, but most importantly, I'm asking that you share this out with someone who may need a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't already done so, please be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch, as well as free resources to nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So give yourself permission to pause, reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly, for you. And remember, if anything in today's episode hits home, be sure to drop those green hearts in the chat. That is our community's way of saying, I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. And remember, whether you are listening from work, if you're stuck in traffic, washing the dishes, or maybe hiding in the bathroom from your kids, this space is for you. This moment is for you. And I honor the courage that it takes to just pause long enough to be present in your own life. So as we get into this, again, I just want to honor you all for being here, for taking the time for yourselves today. Now, today we are talking about something that most of us have lived through, but rarely name. Something that shapes who we are, how we love, and how we stay in, or maybe not even how, why we stay in situations long after our spirit has left the room. Something that whispers in the quiet moments and shouts at us when we're triggered. We're going to talk about healing booby traps. All right, those sneaky little like emotional landmines that trauma leaves behind that keeps pulling you back into familiar pain. See, trauma doesn't just hurt you, it teaches you, right? It teaches your body what to expect. It teaches your mind what's normal. It teaches your heart how to survive pain by turning it into a routine. And so because of that, a lot of us are choosing harmful people intentionally. We're choosing what our nervous system recognizes. We're choosing what feels like home, even if home was unstable, unpredictable, draining, and unsafe. And let's be real. Some of us grew up in households where love came with conditions, confusion, and chaos. So now when somebody shows up calm and consistent and emotionally available, you start side-eyeing them like they're the problem. You don't trust the peace because nobody ever taught you that peace was allowed. You don't trust the tenderness because your story trains you to expect tension. You don't trust good because your environment normalized almost enough, right? And that right there, that's the trap. See, trauma will have you thinking that The familiar is safe. The inconsistent is passion, or that unpredictable is chemistry, and that uncomfortable equals love. And before you know it, you're right back in the same type of relationship, the same type of dynamic, feeling the same type of pain, just wearing different faces. But here's the good news. The moment that you recognize the pattern, you disrupt the pattern. And the moment that you interrupt the pattern, you reclaim your power. So today we're going to unpack how trauma tricks you, how your body participates in the cycle without your permission, and how you can break free from choosing what hurt you simply because it feels familiar. This conversation might get a little uncomfortable. It may tug on some places that you don't always visit, but we know that discomfort is the doorway to healing. And you don't have to walk through that doorway alone, because we're doing this together like we always do. So we're going to begin by taking a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale slowly from your mouth. Because today we choose awareness over autopilot. We choose healing over habit. And we choose truth over trigger. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start off by, just pointing out that your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. Hey, Sugar Mama, welcome in. And I think that it's best to start right there, because I think this is one of the most misunderstood parts of healing. See, your trauma didn't just break your heart, it trains your nervous system. It conditioned your body to respond in certain ways long before your mind was even old enough to understand what was happening. A lot of us walk around here thinking that we're dramatic or too much or overreacting or even sensitive, when really what we are is remembering, right? Not remembering mentally, but remembering almost like psychologically, remembering emotionally, remembering somatically. See, your body holds every chapter that you've tried to skip, every feeling that you buried, every moment that you pushed through because you didn't have the option to fall apart. And because your body had to learn survival faster than it learned safety, it started treating danger like it was normal and comfort like it was confusion. Let me break it down. If you grew up in a home where your family yelled more than they listened, where tension lived in the walls, where love had conditions and expectations, walking on eggshells was a daily routine, or affection came with strings, perhaps silence meant something was wrong, then that's what your nervous system has recorded as a baseline. That is what your nervous system believes is normal. And so now, as an adult, your body reacts before you consciously understand what's happening. You walk into a room and instantly feel on guard because your body got there first. Someone raises their hand and your heart drops. That's because your body got there first. A relationship feels calm and steady, and suddenly you feel suspicious. That's because your body arrived first. You feel peace and your brain whispers, this is weird. It's too calm. It's too quiet. Something's not right. That's not intuition. That's not discernment. That's not spiritual warning. That's memory. That's your nervous system saying, last time things felt calm, the storm hit. Right? It's your body trying to tell you to brace yourself. See, our bodies are responding to history, not the current moments. And here's the wild part. Your mind might forget events over time, but your body remembers everything. The tone, the tension, the timing, the patterns, right? The way your stomach clenched, the way you held your breath, the way you swallowed your feelings to stay safe. Your body carries the blueprint to every single survival tactic that you created just to make it through the environments that you had no power to change. And so now, when you're trying to heal, trying to grow, trying to love better, trying to choose better, your body keeps pulling you back into what it knows. Absolutely. I could totally understand that fibromyalgia is or could be linked to trauma. I think that all of the those aches and pains and things like that are tied to our trauma, and we just don't know it. And so for many of us, that's why we feel so drawn to familiar chaos, right? That's why you confuse trauma responses with intuition. That's why you call anxiety chemistry. That's why your heart races around the same type of people that you should be running from, not running toward. And it's simply because your body believes that it's protecting you. Even when it's leading you right back into what hurt you. Your nervous system isn't trying to sabotage you, right? It's trying to keep you alive the best way it knows how. And the problem is the old protective patterns don't fit your new healed identity. And here's the part that we don't talk about enough. You can't outthink your body. And let me rephrase that. You cannot outthink a body that never learned what safety feels like. You have to teach it. You have to reintroduce it into calm. You have to show it that stability isn't dangerous. You have to sit with it long enough that the unfamiliar becomes familiar. Yes, trauma does produce hormone responses that cause medical damage. Absolutely. And so healing doesn't start in our mind. Healing starts in our body, in the breath, in the grounding, in the awareness, right? And the intentional choice to say, this reaction is old. This feeling is familiar. Welcome in, Valinda. But this moment is new. So even though this reaction is old and the feeling, I've been here before, I felt this before, we have to remind ourselves that this moment is new, right? And that's the work. And when you start to understand that, you'll stop blaming yourself for your patterns. You stop judging yourself for your reactions. You stop shaming yourself for your triggers. Because now you know that you're not broken. You're just conditioned, right? You've been conditioned over the years to believe something that we now understand not to be true. And the good thing about conditioning is that conditioning can be unlearned, right? So we just have to do the work. We just have to show up saying, I know better now, so I'm doing better. And let's go a little bit deeper into this, right? Because I think that this is where so many of us get trapped without even realizing it. A lot of us have been conditioned. And when I say conditioned, I'm talking about been trained, right? Many of us have been trained to mistake chaos for connection. Good. I'm so happy to hear that, love. And you know what? We don't do it on purpose, right? We don't wake up and say, let me go love someone who's gonna mess up my spirit today. No, that's not what happens. What really happens is your trauma teaches you that emotional turbulence is normal because we know what chaos is. We grew up in chaos, right? And once that becomes normal, anything outside of that, meaning anything peaceful and steady and predictable, starts to feel suspicious. Let's be honest. Some of us grew up in homes where affection was only showed after an argument. Drop a green heart if this resonates with you. Some of us grew up in homes where apologies came with tension, where comfort was inconsistent, where love felt like earning instead of receiving, where your nervous system only got activated when the vibe shifted. And that activation became your internal definition of closeness, right? I see a lot of green hearts. And so now when life hands you something healthy, someone calm, someone soft, someone who communicates without raising their voice, you think something's wrong, that this feels too easy, maybe that you don't deserve this, that nobody can be this consistent. Some of us even think this is boring. But let's just call it what it is. That's not boredom. That's unhealed conditioning. That's trauma confusing safety with stagnation. Chaos only becomes exciting because your body is used to that adrenaline. It's used to the emotional roller coasters. It's used to the highs and the lows that feel like love, but taste more like survival. So when someone doesn't trigger that chemical rush, when you don't feel that spark, you think, see, this means we're not compatible, right? But that spark that you're missing was never love. It was just your nervous system activated. That flutter in your stomach around inconsistent people, that was anxiety. That was fear. That was hypervigilance. That was your body scanning for danger, trying to predict the next emotional shift. But because that sensation felt familiar, because you learned it very early, you started calling it chemistry. Welcome in, just choose you. You started labeling inconsistency as mysterious. You started calling manipulation passion. You started calling emotional unpredictability a strong connection, right? And the one person who sits with you, talks to you, meets you where you are, shows up without chaos, oh, you end up thinking that they're too much, that they're too soft, or maybe they're not exciting enough. And if we're being real, many of us don't know what to do with consistency because we've never had room to rest inside of it. Welcome in, imagination. Thank you so much for the follow. And so, there comes a point where calm feels wrong, but it's only because chaos is what your body knows. Healthy love doesn't spike your heart rate. It doesn't activate your anxiety. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't make you guess how someone feels about you. Healthy love is ease, clarity, steadiness, consistency, communication, safety, and softness. Not because it's perfect. It's just because it's regulated. But you've spent so many years surviving emotional storms that now peace feels like a setup. You keep waiting for the other shoe to drop because where you come from, calm never lasted long. Thank you. Calm was the warning before the explosion happened, right? So now your spirit doesn't trust the slow pace, right? I can't trust this. It's not going to last long. Your heart doesn't trust gentle, and your nervous system doesn't trust the quiet. So let me say this clearly. Peace is not boring. Peace is healing. Thank you, guys. And you're not bored. You're simply just detoxing from dysfunction. Your body is withdrawing from the emotional adrenaline rush that you've mistaken for a connection. Your inner child is used to being confused, right? Confused because she or he has never seen what love looks like in stillness. But peace isn't boring. It's new. And your healing hasn't met new enough for it to feel comfortable yet. But comfort comes with repetition, right? Safety comes with exposure, and trust grows with time. So if someone brings you peace, don't push them away because they don't activate the parts of you that you're still trying to heal from. If someone comes to you and they're communicating clearly, don't assume that they're hiding something. If someone is consistent in your life, don't run from them because consistency feels foreign. Sometimes the very thing that feels strange is the exact thing that you've been praying for. So I want you to hear me when I say that you deserve a love that doesn't feel like survival. You deserve connection that doesn't require you to break yourself down to feel alive. You are so welcome. You deserve someone who feels like peace, not a project. And so I want to talk about how these booby traps show up in our relationships, right? Because that's a big problem. So let's unpack how these trauma booby traps show up in our relationships, because this is where so many hearts get caught, confused, and worn out, right? We think that we're choosing people, but oftentimes we're simply choosing patterns. We think that we're being selective, but often we're being trigger led, right? We call it my type, but sometimes your type is actually just your trauma. So let's talk about it. The nervous system pulls you toward what's familiar, not what's healthy. Have you ever met someone who checked off all the boxes? I'm talking about they were emotionally available, communicative, thoughtful, gentle, and somehow you just feel nothing, right? You feel nothing for them. But then you meet someone who is inconsistent, unpredictable, a little emotionally unavailable, and suddenly your stomach is doing backflips like you're in the Olympics. Honey, that spark that you're feeling, I hate to break it to you, that's not chemistry. That is cortisol. That is adrenaline. That is your nervous system saying, this feels like the past. Let's run it back. Let's repeat the script, right? So it took years for me to understand that I did not have a type. I had a trauma. Okay? Your body isn't picking a partner. It is picking a familiar emotional pattern. And because familiarity feels safe, even when it's harmful, you label the dysfunction a connection, right? And oftentimes we bond with people who mirror our wounds, not our worth. Okay? Sometimes we fall for people who activate our unhealed places because those places feel familiar. So again, if you grew up feeling unseen, unheard, earning love through effort, carrying emotional weight for other people, walking on eggshells, being the peacemaker, or fixing broken adults as a child, then guess what? You will feel magnetically drawn to people who recreate that same dynamic. And you won't call it dysfunction, you will call it chemistry. We just clicked. We had a vibe. Or my personal favorite that I hear is there's just something about them. Yeah. And that something is an emotional wound in you recognizing the emotional wound in them. Right? Am I stepping on toes today? Am I hitting a nerve with this one? Because again, listen, y'all, it was me for years. And there are two familiar traumas making eye contact across the room, right? And it's always that, hey stranger, let's repeat the cycle. Let's do it again. You said not you calling me out in front of the class. I mean, I'm just saying. I told you it was gonna be that kind of day, friend. Okay. But again, it's a trauma bond. It's I see you. You see me? Let's let's mess up each other's lives. Let's just keep the cycle going. Run it back. Spin the block. Whatever it is. Let's do it all over again. I just got out of one toxic relationship, but let me start a new one with you. And when you're used to being the one who overgives, you will constantly pick people who undergive. Right? And let's be honest, some of us don't even know how to receive. All we know how to do is perform, to fix, to carry, to sacrifice. But receiving, oh my God, we don't know what to do. And so we gravitate towards people who need us more than they respect us. Because that feels like home. Because we're used to earning our spot in somebody's life. So when somebody tries to pour into you, you get uncomfortable. You pull back. You think they are too much. They are extra. And you think, I don't want to be a burden. But you're not a burden. You're just unpracticed in being cared for. That's the booby trap. You tend to confuse intensity with intention. You ever been in a situation where somebody came in hot, meaning like love bombing and grand gestures and deep conversations on day 2, right? Future talk in the first week. And it feels so intoxicating, right? I ain't never had this before. But that intensity is not intention. Intensity is not a commitment. Intensity is not love. A lot of us grew up lacking emotional depth. So the moment that somebody shows us just a little bit of passion, we hand them the key to the whole damn house. Trauma will have you confusing being overwhelmed with being loved. And so then what happens? We begin to forgive red flags because they feel familiar. The booby trap shows up when we say things like, I know they have issues, but I can help them. They're just going through something. Or they didn't mean it. It's not that bad. I just need to be more patient. Or whatever, we've been through worse. We've all said it. Hell, probably more times than we care to admit. But let me say something gently. Okay? Attachment isn't loyalty. Overfunctioning isn't love. Overextending isn't compassion. Trauma bonding isn't destiny. You forgiving red flags because your inner child was conditioned to normalize them. You're not attached to the person. You're attached to their pattern. We're just going to take a pause for a moment because I feel like I'm picking on y'all. So do me a favor, everybody. Share this out. Let's bring some new people in. Since I'm stepping all over y'all's toes, invite some more people into the room. Let's see if they understand where we're going with this. Everybody share the live out on any platform. Invite people in. You can go to the bottom of your friends list. People you don't even talk to. Don't matter. Just invite them in, y'all. Share the people in. Because there's a message. And somebody needs to hear it. And maybe it's not you. Maybe I'm picking on y'all unnecessarily. Okay? Just remember, I'm looking at me on the screen. So I'm not just talking to y'all. I'm talking to me too. Thank you, Kale. Sherelle, welcome in. Sherelle, they said I'm picking on them today, sis. But we're going to keep going, okay? We're going to keep going. Because now I want to talk about emotional unavailability and how it feels familiar. So we lean into it. Girl, yeah, I'm picking on them today, honey. If love never felt emotionally present in your childhood, then an unavailable partner feels normal. Yeah, girl, we talking about the trauma booby traps. And so, if you grew up not really understanding or feeling, this emotionally present, then when you meet somebody who's unavailable to you, that's just normal, right? So you end up loving people who show up only when they need something. People who give mixed signals, right? That breadcrumb affection. You are attracted to people who won't communicate, keep you guessing, and the ones who lack emotional maturity. And we like to call that trying to understand them, right? But newsflash, friend, you understand them because you've lived that dynamic before. So you're not confused, you're conditioned, right? And so now this trauma pattern has become your love language without your permission. We didn't authorize this. At this point, I'm looking around trying to figure out who signed off on this. Over the years, many of us have learned to interpret love through inconsistency, withdrawal, intensity, conflict, and emotional distance. So when people show up with calm, steady love, all of a sudden we feel anxious and bored and suspicious and disconnected. But that is not intuition. That is our trauma speaking louder than our truth. Hey, Priscilla, welcome in. And so the real booby trap is that you think you're choosing a person, but your nervous system is choosing a pattern. And until you break that pattern, you will mistake familiar for fate. You will call somebody your soulmate when really they are just a trigger with good timing. Yes. You will confuse attraction with reenactment. And here's the beauty of awareness. Once you see the pattern, you get to stop participating in it. Once you understand the trap, you stop stepping on it. And that's what today is all about. This moment, right? Just raising awareness to say, you know what? Been there before, did that before, not going to do it again. I don't have to keep laying my hand on the hot stove to realize that burns. I remember the last time it burned. I see the flame, right? I don't have to keep repeating this cycle over and over and over again, right? Which leads me to self-sabotage, right? Many of us are setting traps for ourselves. right? And so we've got to get into this conversation on self-sabotage, the trap that we set with our own hands, the patterns that we participate in even when we know better. And it's not because we're broken. It's not because we enjoy pain, right? It's not because we're incapable of healthy love. It is because the version of us who learned to survive is still in charge, right? That hurt little girl or that hurt little boy is still running the show. And so let's slow walk through this. You ever notice how you pull away when people get close? It's like you start retreating right when I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. Okay, so you ever notice how you start retreating when somebody starts getting consistent in your life? Like right when they start showing real interest, right when things start feeling a little too intimate, suddenly you find a reason to withdraw, right? That's when all of a sudden you're like, I need space. I'm not ready. Thank you for the follow. This is moving too fast. Oh, y'all, in fact, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. When I met my husband, we were friends initially. But when that friendship was shifting into us dating, I was like, we need to slow down. Like something feels off with him. Okay. So I 100% understand, this whole, I need a reason to withdraw. I was looking for any excuse to get away because I didn't have a type, y'all. I had a trauma. And I was attracted to my trauma. But my husband felt different. And I was like, y'all, this moving too quick. But thankfully, I looked a little deeper and realized that nothing was actually wrong. I was just scared because this felt foreign, right? And so when this happens, it's our nervous system whispering that close feels dangerous, right? It's your nervous system telling you that love doesn't last, that people leave. Don't get too attached because things are going to shift. And so you do the breaking before anybody else has a chance to break you. So my husband will tell you, I tried to get out of Dodge, y'all. Especially when that man was like, I know you're my wife. And I was like, boy, you crazy. Like, I haven't even consented to being your girlfriend yet. You talk about, I'm your wife. Like, boy, bye. I had to hurt me before he could hurt me. Right. And, I learned through therapy that wasn't coldness. That was protection. Right. I was trying to protect myself and I just disguised it as distance. And maybe that's not you. Maybe you're the one who turns into the ghost and you start to silently shut down. Right. Because let's be real. Some of us vanish the moment that vulnerability enters the room. And it's not because we don't want a connection. It's because connection requires exposure. And that's not what some of us are willing to give, right? Because exposure requires trust. And trust requires healing. Something that not all of us have stepped into fully. So instead of saying, I'm scared, you say nothing. You disappear. You shut down emotionally. You leave people on red, right? You pretend that you don't care. But the truth is, you care too much. And that's the part of you that feels unsafe. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding vulnerability. And so, now we begin to overthink, right? We overthink ourselves out of good things. See, many of us don't even need external sabotage because our thoughts do all the heavy lifting. You meet somebody who's nice and kind, and suddenly your brain becomes a private detective, right? You over here like, who sent you? What's your angle? Are they lying? This cannot be real. They're probably playing me. I'm not ready for this. I'm not good enough for this, right? All the things. But that's not intuition. That's fear wearing a prophetic voice. It's whispering to you. And so what we have to understand is that overthinking is a trauma response that the body uses to control the unknown. If you can predict it, you think that you can prevent it. But all you're really doing is talking yourself out of a healthy thing that you've been secretly praying for. And so again, many of us, we pre-reject people before they can reject us, right? Some of us walk around with a pre-end, right? We walk around pre-ended. You show up already expecting disappointment, already anticipating abandonment, bracing yourself for the worst. And I know this all too well because you guys, that was me. In the beginning of my relationship, I was so ready to sabotage the relationship. I would pick fights. I would do things to create distance between us. Honey, push all that man's buttons. I would downplay my feelings. I would shrink. And at some point, I had convinced myself that I would just be better off alone. And it wasn't until I started going through therapy that I thought that this was helping me to avoid heartbreak again, to avoid pain. But I learned that the truth of the matter was I wasn't avoiding heartbreak. I was experiencing it prematurely. I was grieving a loss that hadn't even happened yet. And so I had to learn that I needed to disrupt things. I had to shift things. You know, they say if you want something different, you have to do something different. And so you have to get in there and you have to disrupt it. And, you know, again, I was able to do that by knowing that I deserved better. You know, my dad would always remind me that, hey, if you want something different, you got to do something different. You deserve more, you know? And so hearing my dad's voice would keep me in the relationship, but I did still have bad habits that I had to break. And so again, through therapy, I really believe that that's why 2020 did a number on me. And, you know, I started going to therapy January of 2020. So before COVID even really hit in March, I'm so thankful and grateful that I had therapy, because when the world shut down and then I was forced, you know, we were all forced to be at home. And so that also forced us to deal with and confront issues that we had been running from, because now you're just trapped in the house with it. Because what's inside the house was safer than what was outside the house at that point. You know, so thankfully through therapy, I was able to start to see some of my traits and to acknowledge what many of my traumas were and what was happening, and that I was running from a good thing. And thankfully, you know, God blessed me with a patient husband, because a lot of people would have ran for the hills like, this chick crazy. Here I am trying to just love her and she over here losing her shit. Like, but thankfully, you know, God gave me a husband who was really patient with my process, and, you know, long enough for me to recognize that I didn't have a type. I had trauma, you know? So we got to be thankful for these partners. But I don't know, like I said, awareness, I really believe, is just a key part in all of this. And that's why I try my best to point out all of these things, not to pick on you, not to call you out, but to just simply remind you that, hey, once you're aware of it, once you know better, You can't undo that. So when we know better, we then do better. And so I want us to be able to recognize, all of these traps. So that way we could get up out the trap. I don't know. It's something like it breaks my heart when I hear people who are just stuck and I can see, where they're stuck. Like here lately, I feel like I talk to a lot of people who are doing a lot of shrinking, right? Hey Tisha. People who act small and call it humility, right? They say that they're being humble. And that's another form of self-sabotage, right? And I don't think we name that enough. A lot of us water ourselves down so we don't intimidate people. You dim your joy so nobody feels insecure. Hey girl, hey. There are those that silence their needs because they don't want to be labeled as too much. And so what happens is then you pretend that you're unbothered so nobody has the power to hurt you, right? But here's the thing, shrinking doesn't prevent rejection. It only delays it. Because the version of you someone accepts when you're dimmed isn't the full you anyway. And sooner or later, the real you will feel suffocated. So that's why I'm constantly telling people and myself, don't dim your light. Don't shrink for other people. You got to go full out, all in. Otherwise you're going to keep choosing people who confirm your greatest fears. Right? And I think that's probably one of the sneakiest traps of all. Right? When we start picking people who can't commit, who don't communicate, who are emotionally unavailable, who treat you as optional, or who don't show consistency. And it's not because that's what we want. It's just because those people reinforce the story that we already know and believe. We're used to that. Right? Because we believe that we're hard to love, that we're not enough, or we're used to being disappointed. And people never choose us. So subconsciously, we gravitate towards people who make that narrative feel true. Because if your trauma can predict it, then you think that you can control it. But that's that self-sabotage described as my type. You don't have a type. You have a trauma. And that trauma is causing you to mistake survival patterns for personality. Some of the things that you call, it's just who I am, are actually who you became when you didn't feel safe. The isolation, the hyper independence, the emotional distance, that people pleasing, the inability to trust, right? Those are all walls around your heart, right? That's your fear of asking for help. So those aren't personality traits. That's your protective armor. And the problem is, armor keeps danger out, but it also prevents love from coming in. And the healing is asking you to do something terrifying, which is why a lot of people don't want to heal. Because healing is asking us to take the armor off, to be fully exposed, and to be fully open. Because again, we know that armor has protected us from danger, but it has also prevented us from being loved in the manner that we deserve. And so now many of us think that, that accountability that comes with healing means blame, means that you got to point some fingers, and it doesn't. And so the most compassionate truth that I can share is that you didn't choose your trauma. But now that you're grown, you do choose your patterns. And being accountable doesn't mean that you have to shame yourself. It simply means that you're recognizing that I'm not the villain. I'm not the problem, but I am responsible for healing. See, self-sabotage is not a moral flaw. It is a survival skill that has overstayed its welcome. And you don't have to shame yourself for it. You just need to understand it so now you get to outgrow it. You're not sabotaging because you don't want love. You're sabotaging because love feels risky. And your trauma taught you to survive versus surrendering. But you can learn new patterns. Contrary to what they said, you can teach an old dog new tricks, y'all. You can teach your nervous system safety. You can show yourself that intimacy doesn't have to mean injury. And the moment that you understand your self-sabotage, you'll start choosing differently. You'll start choosing you. So it is time for us to recognize that familiar ain't the same as safe. And I want y'all to let this one settle in right there, okay? It'll ultimately change the way you see yourself, your patterns, and your past. Because again, a lot of us grew up believing that if something felt familiar, it meant it was safe. If a person, a place, or a dynamic felt like home, that meant that it was good for us. But what if home wasn't safe? What if home was loud? What if home was tense? What if home was unpredictable? What if home was lonely? What if home taught you to ignore your own needs to keep other people calm? So again, the healing truth is that familiar does not equal safe. Familiar equals known. And known ain't always good. So perhaps I need to say that louder for the people pleasers that are in the back of the room, or maybe the fixer sitting in the front row, or the strong friend that's sitting somewhere in between, right? Who thinks that they have to hold everybody together. Familiar is not the same as safe. Familiar pain feels easier than unknown peace. See, peace requires trust. Chaos requires nothing. You already know how to navigate chaos. You know how to read the room with one breath. You know how to shrink yourself to keep the peace. You know how to walk on eggshells like a trained dancer. You know how to hide your feelings to avoid conflict. Chaos is exhausting, but it's predictable. Now, peace is unpredictable because you've never had a chance to build a life inside of it. And so peace asks you to open up, to receive, to sit still instead of performing, to trust that you're worthy without hustle or hardship. But if you didn't grow up around peace, it won't feel natural at first. It will feel very foreign. And what's foreign feels uncomfortable, even if it's good for you. This is why so many of us run from the very thing that we pray for. It's because trauma teaches you to associate love with labor. And so if your early idea of love required effort, meaning, you prioritize everyone else's needs, you stayed quiet in the background, fixing things and smoothing things over, being the responsible one. your body learned that love equals work, love equals sacrifice, love equals proving yourself, love equals holding everything together. So now, when you meet someone who doesn't require that labor, or someone who loves you gently and consistently without that chaos, you start doubting it. You start questioning it and you think, why isn't this harder? This is too easy. Something ain't right. Because your nervous system only recognizes love that's wrapped in struggle. But struggle is not a love language. Exhaustion is not a connection. And labor is not intimacy. You are not required to earn what you deserve. So we have to start recognizing these almost enough traps, right? The familiar trap isn't always a dramatic one. Sometimes it's quiet and soft and sneaky, right? It's the person who gives you just enough affection to keep you hooked, but not enough to actually meet your needs. Or the partner who apologizes but never changes. The friend who loves your presence but ignores your boundaries. Or that situationship that feels emotionally full one week and empty the next. When you are comfortable and used to almost, you convince yourself that it's enough. But almost enough still ain't enough. Almost love is emotional starvation. Almost respect is still disrespect. But because you've learned how to survive in the familiar, now you can't thrive in it. So today, let's speak the truth, right? A lot of us know how to survive in dysfunction. We've learned how to compartmentalize. We know how to numb. We know how to bounce back quickly. We know how to hold others while nobody holds us. We know how to smile while being broken on the inside. But thriving and growing and resting and opening up and allowing yourself to feel safe, oh God, that feels unfamiliar. But again, I just want to remind you that unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. It just means new. And new is the uncomfortable before it turns beautiful. That strength that you feel in familiar spaces isn't the same as stability. Just because you learn how to endure something doesn't mean that you're meant to stay in it. Strength in chaos is still chaos. Resilience in the middle of dysfunction is still dysfunction. And your endurance in the pain is still pain. But at some point, we've decided to romanticize survival so much that we've forgotten you're not meant to survive your whole life. You're meant to live it. Yes, we have seasons of survival, but that should not be your entire story. Sometimes the familiar version of you only knows how to survive, but the healed version of you, she's trying to pull you into a life where you no longer have to earn peace. You simply just allow it. And so I want to tell you what safety actually feels like. It feels like not having to rehearse conversations in your head. It feels like sleeping at night without anxiety looping in your mind. It feels like being yourself without the fear of being called too much. It feels like communicating without walking on eggshells. It feels like consistency without chaos. It feels like being cared for without conditions. It feels like rest. I mean, real rest. So, yeah, at first, peace does feel foreign. Then it feels uncomfortable. Then it feels familiar. Then it becomes home. A home that you didn't even realize you deserve. And so I hope that you hear me from a place of love when I say that familiar ain't safe, and safe ain't boring. Boring ain't peace, and peace ain't a trap. It's your inheritance. You don't have to keep choosing familiar pain patterns just because you recognize them. You don't have to stay in spaces that your healed self wouldn't tolerate. And you don't have to shrink because somebody else can't grow. Familiar ain't safe. That's right, cat. Familiarity is a comfort zone, but safety is a healing zone. And you deserve a healing zone, not a comfort zone. So now that we've named the traps and explored how they show up in our spirit or our relationships, let's talk about how to actually catch them before they catch you. Because awareness is not just power, it is our protection. And I think that one of the most liberating parts of healing is learning how to recognize the pattern while you're still standing in the doorway, not after you've already stepped in and sat down. So the first thing you have to do is pay attention to your body, right? If your body reacts before your mind has time to process it, I need you to pause. That quick jump, that tightening in your stomach, or the adrenaline rush when someone texts you back, or when someone healthy shows up in your life, those reactions are old memories trying to reenact themselves. See, your intuition is wise, but triggers imitate intuition extremely well. So the moment that you feel that something is off, don't immediately trust that feeling. Examine it. You got to ask yourself, is this a warning or is this a memory pretending to be one? Another sign is noticing when someone reminds you of someone who hurt you, but not necessarily on the surface, right? It's not about their job, their looks, their zodiac sign. It's about the emotional pattern that they activate. If they give you the same emotional highs and lows that someone did from your past, that's a pattern, not destiny. So if you find yourself explaining, away their behavior or justifying their inconsistency, or perhaps trying to understand them more than they're trying to understand you, perhaps that's a sign that you might be replaying an old script that your soul is tired of performing. You also have to watch yourself when chaos feels exciting and peace feels suspicious. If you're more drawn to someone who keeps you guessing than someone who brings you calm, you need to get curious, not judgmental. Ask yourself, why does my nervous system trust instability more than security? That discomfort you feel good around, or is it healthy or stable energy, right? Because again, that's your nervous system detoxing from the adrenaline rush that you used to call love. Pay attention when your mind tries to predict disappointment before it happens. If you start crafting backup plans, rehearsing arguments that haven't happened, or lowering your expectations without being asked to, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that's your trauma steering you, not your truth. When someone hasn't actually done anything, but your spirit is preparing for heartbreak, that's a sign that you're standing on a booby trap. That trauma trap will always make you plan for the worst, even when the moment is offering you something better. And lastly, watch for the pull towards what drains you. If you feel magnetically drawn to the same kind of person who broke you, betrayed you, ignored your needs, understand that pull, is, I understand what it really is. It's familiarity, not fate. Right? It's history, not healing. The gravitational pull of trauma is very strong. Thank you. And it is very strong. But once you identify it, you can break the spell. Your awareness is equivalent to like the scissors that cuts the cord between you and the old version of you who only knew how to survive. Remember, family, the trap loses its power once you name it. So when you begin to slow down enough to examine your reactions, to question your patterns, and to sit with your discomfort instead of acting out of it, you really begin to reclaim the authority over your heart and your choices and your healing. This is how you avoid repeating cycles that you're finally strong enough to break. This is how you build a life that supports your peace instead of threatening it. This is how you choose differently on purpose. Again, the moment that you give yourself grace, you soften the shame. And the shame is the fuel that keeps cycles alive. So when that shame starts to dissolve, your choices return. And when your choices return, you can reclaim your power. You can choose better. Choosing yourself on purpose means that you no longer settle for relationships that mirror wounds. Right? You choose relationships that mirror your worth. You choose a future that feels like healing, not repetition. And you choose a version of yourself that is rooted in self-respect, not self-sacrifice. This is where the cycle ends. Not the past, not in the trauma, not in the familiar. It ends with you choosing differently, choosing deeply, choosing intentionally, choosing with clarity, choosing with courage, choosing with love. So I hope that this sits on your spirit today. I hope you know that you are rewriting patterns that generations before you lived and that generations after you will benefit from. You are doing this one choice at a time. So as we get ready to close out our space today, I want you to sit with something honest, something freeing. And it's that your trauma may have shaped you, but it doesn't define you. It taught you survival, yes. It taught you patterns, yes. It taught your body how to respond, even in moments where your mind wished it could have forgotten. But I hope that you hear me clearly when I say that trauma does not get the final say over your healing, over your relationships, your future, or your identity. I hope that this conversation didn't feel like it was shaming you. It wasn't meant to expose you, and it wasn't meant to make you feel unworthy. It's meant to free you. Because, again, the moment that you name the pattern, you weaken its hold. The moment that you recognize the trap, you reclaim your power. The moment you understand why, you finally gain access to how to choose differently, how to respond differently, how to break cycles that our spirit has outgrown. And so I hope that you are listening with your heart, not just your ears. And I hope that you understand that you are not choosing familiar pain because you're broken. You're choosing familiar pain because no one else ever gave you a safer alternative. You weren't taught what to look for. You weren't modeled what peace feels like. You weren't shown what healthy love sounds like. You weren't taught to trust yourself without fear. But today you learned something new, right? Today you saw your patterns clearly. You understood your triggers. Today you looked at your nervous system and said, I see you, but I'm the captain now. And that alone is healing. That alone is growth. That is you stepping into a new chapter with awareness and authority. Everybody type, I'm the captain now. Because you get to take over. We are no longer surviving. We are a community that is coming together to heal out loud and thriving. I'm the captain now. That's right. And as we wrap up, I want you guys to take this with you. You are allowed to choose peace even when it feels unfamiliar. You are allowed to choose love that does not exhaust you. You are allowed to choose partners and friendships and environments that you don't have to perform in to be valued. You are allowed to outgrow patterns that once felt like home. You are allowed to evolve into someone that your past self won't even recognize. And the beauty of it is you don't have to do it all at once, because healing is not a race. It is a rhythm. Some days you'll take leaps. Some days you'll take tiny steps. Some days your only victory will be recognizing an old trigger without reacting to it. And that is still progress. So I encourage you to give yourself grace. Give yourself softness. Give yourself patience. Because growth is not linear, but it is always happening. Now, if anything in today's episode touched your spirit, cracked something open, or gave you a new language for something that you've been carrying silently, I want you to drop a green heart in the chat. Remember, in our community, green hearts say that I'm healing, I am growing, and I'm choosing differently from this moment forward. Remember that you deserve a life where love does not hurt. You deserve a love that mirrors your worth, not your wounds. You deserve a peace that doesn't have to be earned. You deserve a future that feels like softness and safety and stability, not survival. You are worthy of unfamiliar blessings that are waiting just on the other side of those familiar patterns. I thank each and every one of you for breathing with me today. Thank you for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for your courage, and your willingness to grow and heal out loud in this community. Before we part ways, let me leave you all with a little extra love and light. As always, I encourage you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every single moment in between. I want you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels out of reach. And know that here at the Self Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. You are not meant to repeat pain. You're meant to rewrite your story. So don't you ever be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. Remember, there is no podcast tomorrow or Thursday. We will be back on Friday on YouTube only. So Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, I would encourage you to head over there, search for Room2Breathe Project, and subscribe so that way you're tapped in. But for everyone else, happy holidays to you all. I pray that you guys have peace and, hopefully you guys are able to reconnect with family and friends. Just be grateful for the things that you have. I know that a lot of times we get caught up in everything that's going on and we start operating from a mindset of lack. This season, I pray that each and every one of you can operate with an attitude of gratitude. Focus on the things that you have, right? Focus on the good, and the good gets better. But happy holidays to each and every one of you. Safe travels for those of you who are taking trips. May good food find all of your bellies. And I will be around for those of you who still need conversation and community. Make sure you join the Discord. I will still be available on those days. I'm just going to be cooking and teaching people how to cook on that day. So I'm going to be a little tied up and I'm going to sleep in a couple days. But I'll be back on YouTube Friday at 9 a.m., you guys. I love you. If you guys want to hang out from Facebook and YouTube, come on over to the TikTok side. I'm going to stick around till about 11 on TikTok, so you can keep hanging out with us. But for everyone else, I will see you guys on Friday. I love you. Thank you.